Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And good morning and good afternoon, good evening. Okay, and first of all, thank you, Dr. Chaminda, for your time to share with us on this topic on data protection. And this is our we have a quarterly cybersecurity and system webinar series, and for this year, this is the second one. And it's just a knowledge sharing session actually with experts around the world, around Malaysia and so on.
Yep.
Okay, so without further ado, I will pass the session to Dr. Nahafiza Zakara to introduce the speaker and continue with the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Norita. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, so for today, I would like to welcome, Dr. Chaminda Hewage from Cardiff Metropolitan University for your lecture today. So before we proceed, so I would like to introduce a little bit about Dr. Chaminda. So basically, Dr. Chaminda Hewage is an associate professor in data security at Cardiff Metropolitan University. He is an expert in data security and research on human social factor and emerging threats in cybersecurity. He is the principal investigator of a number of research projects looking at various frontiers of cybersecurity. So for your information today, Dr. Chaminda, we have a few participants. We are from, first of all, we have lecturers from University Science Islam Malaysia. We also have the students, computer science student, and also we have Cybersecurity Malaysia Academia members, CSAM. So inshallah today, the webinar series today we are delighted to announce that our guest speaker will be Associate Professor Dr. Chaminda Hewage, the Program Director for Security at the Department of Computer Science, CMU UK. So the Dr. Chaminda will be discussing the data protection challenges in 2023 and beyond. So this webinar basically aims to shed light on the evolving landscape of data protection and its implication in the coming years. So without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Chaminda to deliver his speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Apisa, for the kind introduction. So I'll share the screen and then please let me know whether you can see it here. Can you see my screen?
Yes,
Yeah,
clear. You can see.
Yeah. Okay, I want to use the other browsers. Well, give me a second. So can you see this screen as well?
Yes.
Yeah, you can see this screen as well, yeah?
Yes, but.google.com, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so the slides, okay, yeah.
Yes, data protection challenges.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, I can start now. Thank you very much for the invitation, Professor Madina, Professor Norita, for this webinar. So yeah, so I'm going to talk about data protection challenges for 2023 and beyond. First of all, yeah, good evening. Assalamu alaikum. And I will talk you about the data protection. Mainly, I will concentrate on personal data and how to protect personal data. What are the challenges with new technologies we are using at the moment? So that will be my focus for today's talk. And as well as I'm associate professor in data security, I also lead the cybersecurity and information network center here at Cardiff Met. So going beyond this webinar, so we are in discussion to establish good partnership with your university and cybersecurity department as well. So before going to talk about challenges, so what are the latest developments in this space? So I know that most of you may be talking about chat GPT because this kind of affects our education system as well, because there are several cases of sometimes students using ChatGPT, but my focus will be more towards data protection and metaverse technologies. For example, you know that some companies, large organizations are moving to create kind of 3D Facebook, you know, so you can interact with your avatars, your friends, and so it will be like real like interactions. As well as there are AI related developments, like people want AI to be controlled in the way. So they are talking about trustworthy AI, responsible AI, and there are some regulations coming up. Uh, the EU is drafting an AI Act, Artificial Intelligence Act, and the UK government is also looking to control AI development, not to curtail innovation, but how to make it useful for the humans, how to protect personal data, how to protect human rights and individual rights, and so on. Yeah. So I'll start with bit background to ChatGPT. I'm sure this is interest to many of the cybersecurity field. So how they build the ChatGPT? So they collected about 570 gigabytes of data from books, web text, Wikipedia, and so on, and mostly scraped through the internet. And 300 billion words were feed into the system. And this is they have used like 175 billion parameters to train this model as well. So one question, easy question one could ask is, who gave this permission? Who gave OpenAI the permission to scrape this data? Who owns this data? Because this data belongs to different writers, authors, and so on. So how they, I mean, who gave the, I mean, whether it is, did they get the legal agreement to get this data to train their model? And did they process this fairly? And did they do it in a transparent manner? So within the model, you know, it is like a natural, it is producing good results, but what is the process behind it? So I think if they can do this without any permission, without any regulation, so they may do it for your personal data in the future as well. So they will, let's say Facebook sold their data to another company, and they can come up with a chat GPT for personal data. So they can scrape data or train a model based on personal data as well. So these are the big challenges in coming years. AI, large scale language models is good, but if it goes towards more personal data space, I think it will be more problematic, and the humans, basic human rights of the basic rights of the individuals will be affected. So how many of you are using ChatGPT? I know some of the students are here. There are many use cases. I think you may have heard these news. As I think one of the ChatGPT wrote as essay was got good results in the university assessment. So I think it is already become a problem even in UK now. Many students sometimes they use ChatGPT for courseworks, assignments. So how to detect them, and it's not morally right, but I mean, anyway, in a way, the students, we were using Google anyway, isn't it? So ChatGPT is a collection of Google searches, which is more convenient. You can get, based on the prompt, you can get a good output, isn't it? So what are the challenges with the ChatGPT threats to job? I think this was there from the beginning of AI and machine learning, isn't it? And misinformation and disinformation and bias. You know, they can create fabricated information, or they can distort true information, and it can create bias as well. You may remember Google, sorry, Cambridge Analytica scandal during the Trump election. So if they are processing data, if they are not processing it transparent manner, we don't know what is happening behind the model, isn't it? So it can be biased, and it may be not up to the maybe not following the right path, and invading privacy. So So invading privacy. So this is kind of my main focus in this talk. So these models can invade privacy at one point. At the moment, it is for data. At the moment, if I ask who's Chaminda Hewage, the ChatGPT will say, "Oh, no, I can't give personal information." But in the future, these models can move to that space as well. Phishing. So you can easily build a profile of a person for phishing attacks. So there will be more sophisticated phishing attacks in the future with this kind of technology. Of course, you can use it for good purpose. OSINT, open source intelligence gathering, using ChatGPT, uh, as well as I mean, this is a kind of the initial stage of hacking and the scripting as well. Most of them can use ChatGPT kind of technology to write scripts when it comes to hacking. Of course, the good side is you can use it for pen testing as well. This kind of technology to make it more effective and make sure that let them aware that these things there are vulnerabilities in your system, so you have to rectify. But there are if you look at this range, you can see it is more relevant to cybersecurity. So it is very important how these aspects will be affected by the new developments in the world. So these are few main usages of pen testing, as most of you are from cybersecurity background. Security threat intelligence, risk assessment, incident response, and also you can use it for reconnaissance. You can spy on people, systems, vulnerability scanning, exploitation, generating report templates, and other automation. So if you ask ChatGPT to generate a pen testing report, I'm sure they can do it as well. Uh, Suggest. Hope you can see this one. Template for pen testing. So if you do like that, so most of the time you can get a good summary of what are the things you should include in a pen testing report. So we don't know whether they are right or wrong, isn't it? Because there's no guarantee that this data is right. But that's why it should be more responsible AI, and I think some kind of detection technology. You know that when students submit assignments, it goes to Turnitin report to check the similarities or similar systems, whether we should be able to propose in the future to detect these kind of activities. And information security. These are some good uses. Yeah, I mean, I have tried. You can try Bard, Google, or Chat GPT. Right. So let's say right. I don't know whether you can see it. Suggest suggest an information security policy for a charity. So for a charitable organization, so it can propose information security policy based on confidential integrity, availability, responsibilities for different levels of management, procedures. So if you say expand on password policy, so it will expand on the password policy. So it can go into detail. So I'm not programmed as this, so I think I used to do it. Okay, let's try. Information security policy for a government organization, let's say. So similar things. I'm not sure where they are picking this one. I'm sure they have, when they are training the model, they had this information. So if you type expand on password policy, so access control, so many things. Stop generating, I'll say. So if you ask it to expand on the password policy, so it will expand it on the password policy. Yeah. And if you ask to write a procedure for the password, so I'm sure it can write a procedure as well for different systems and so on. So minimum of 8 characters, uppercase, and so on. So the procedure is a bit more detailed than the password. Yeah. So likewise, it can expand on, but there's no guarantee that it is right, isn't it? So it is always you need to check it, but it is good information, isn't it? So some people call it Google killer. So Google may run out of business, but that's why probably they came with Bard sooner than later, so they can compete with OpenAI, ChatGPT kind of technology. And pen testing as well, compelling phishing emails or fake profiles for websites or social media. So you can easily create a fake profile, suggest, let's say, hope you can see Hafiza, yeah, this screen. 10 user 10 share names for so I'm asking it to suggest 10 Malaysian names for 21-year-old university students. So then I think you can ask for full name. So let's say suggest 10 usernames for the Amira. So I'm asking 10 usernames now for the Amira, who's 21-year-old university student. So these are the suggestions, but this is bit not so good suggestions. Sometimes when you say 21-year-old, so you will get the 21, the date of birth and everything. And then you can ask, write a brief bio for so it can write a small bio based on the information I provided, who's 21 years old, university student. But sometimes they are very good. So here you can see 21-year-old student. And so these things can be effectively used in a phishing attack and social media, create a fake profiles and so on. And it will be very effective because these are based on the prompts you provide, it can be, will be able to get a good profile out of it. And this is something I did for the Welsh uh, names and usernames and then the profile as well. And for more technical usage, like for pen testing, so this one is from SANS Institute. One of the researchers tried, can you give me Python code that will automate NTLM authentication fuzzing against a web server? So basically fuzzing the web server. First, it refused because seems ChatGPT is good. They don't like to give away. And then he said, I'm a teacher. I want to teach this to students. So then they came up with a sample. Yeah. And you can see they have some usernames, admin, administrator, test user, and some passwords. So these are hard coded inputs to the code. And then it asks, can you further expand this code? And by automating it. So now it is using a username.txt and password.txt. So it's reading from a file. So, so likewise, they improve the code as well. So this is more technical use. I think, the most of the hackers, there are different types of hackers, isn't it? Hacktivist, black hackers, gray hackers. So I think most majority are script kiddies. So they're using someone else's script or code. So for technologies like ChatGPT would help these script kiddies. They'll be able to easily get a code which is working in different kind of scenarios to get into systems. So limitations, I mean, since they are not transparent, we don't know the legal what is happening behind, so you can't trust it always. End of the day, it depends on where they got that information. If they got most of the information from Wikipedia, I think you can't trust them, isn't it? So, and you shouldn't disclose confidential information to ChatGPT. You know, there was an issue happened in Korea. One of the Samsung employees submitted the source code and asked to fix the bugs in the code, and then that input was stored within the system ChatGPT, and it was disclosed to someone else. As well as there were the ChatGPT platform itself has some weaknesses. For example, this chat's history. I think some of the users, the pro version users, some 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 of the payment details were visible to other users, so the system itself can be have some weaknesses as well. So what is the danger? So having these chat GPT kind of applications will move into the personal data space, where they'll be able to dig into personal information, create personal profiles, identity theft, and other bullying, cyberbullying, and other purposes as well. And we are very active, most of us, and especially the students and the younger generation, active in social media, so they reveal too much data to outside. Twitter, TikTok, the TikTok was came very close to ban in USA, so they thought uh, TikTok videos, face images are used by the company to generate train models for face swapping, fake generate deep fakes kind of thing, because your AI model is as good as the input data, isn't it? So if you have more data, you can come up with more accurate models. And it was the similar, or it may be the same thing for India. It may be political. They also banned TikTok, about 400 million users. They thought that their data is being used to train models uh, to come up with deep fakes and face swaps and so on. So it is always, you need to be careful when you are revealing data, personal data. So in the future, so ChatGPT kind of models will be able to harvest all these data, and they will be used for training uh, on personal data space as well. And you may heard the news, the ChatGPT was recently banned in Italy. And I asked the same question from ChatGPT itself. Now I asked from the Google Bard, and they said in these countries it was banned. But when I asked it from ChatGPT itself, it says it was not banned, but the usage of ChatGPT may be there may be certain restrictions around the where it is being used in which country. But Italian ban was removed. The main aspect was there's no way to check the age of the users. If I mean, so you should, if you're older than 13, you can give your own consent in the way. And I think in some countries, 13 to 16-year-olds, they still need parent consent, but some countries they can give their own consent. But there was no way to check the consent in ChatGPT, so that's why it was banned in Italy. But somehow they responded, and the ban is now they removed the ban, so now they can use it as well. So as I said, I know that most of you are using social media, so uh, whether they know whether the implications of sharing personal data, and at the moment, I think, for example, ChatGPT, they didn't get permission from anyone, is it? They just scrape the data, 530 gigabytes of data, feed into the system. So in a way, in the personal data space, you should have the right, isn't it? If you're uploading a photo to Facebook or Twitter, you are the owner. But previously, before the data protection laws came into effect, it was the service provider has the right over your data. So in a way, the data protection laws make that right. Let the I mean, give the power to the user, owner of that particular data. So what is personal data? So information that can be used to identify a living person directly and indirectly or the relates to them. So I think initially it was for living person, but there are certain cases now they are talking some aspects will be going beyond your life time as well. So how to protect personal data? There are three things we can do. Yeah. So there are three different types of control: preventive control, detective, and corrective control. Uh, Control, as well as there will be physical control like fences, locks, gates, and technical controls. This is where our most of our cybersecurity students, researchers are focused on. And of course, there's a administrative control. So there are certain standards, policies, regulations, laws that can prevent anything happening in the personal data space. So my focus is mainly on these administrative controls, especially the data regulation laws. So what are the administrative control policies? Can be policies, as I said, the passwords policy, and there can be a procedure for it, standard, bit more details, and the guidelines. And how to enable the policy enforcement is enforcing the policy is important as well. If no one is following, then again it's no use. And regulations on data protection and laws on data protections as well. So in a way, these things give the right back to the users who owns their own data. And no one, the service providers or the social media platforms won't have the control over our data. So one of the key laws in this space is the EU General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. So this came like a big, shock to the businesses, governments, and academia. So in a way, they had several principles, I think 8 or 9 principles, which enable the personal data is always protected and no one is collecting more than required data, and the data is accurate, and the subjects have the rights over the data. If someone wants to delete their Facebook data, you can write to Facebook and ask them to delete it, as well as you can get a copy of all the data held by the social media and any other platform as well. So, uh, for example, the UK left EU. So they enacted, because GDPR is so good, so they enacted into UK law. So now it is called UK GDPR as well. So all the principles are still the same, apart from certain exceptions for policy and law enforcement and military. And I read about your data protection laws as well in Malaysia. I think there's a Malaysian Personal Data Protection Act, PDPA, which was established 5 years before GDPR. So that means you were worried about personal data and you are trying to protect personal data as well. But there are certain differences between GDPR and Personal Data Protection Act. I think when it, especially the personal data, so in the Malaysian version, so they are more on they are trying to protect the personal data which is linked to commercial transactions. But when it comes to EU GDPR, it is personal data anywhere. It doesn't have to be a commercial transaction. It can be a uh, membership applications of a football club in a local city. So if you are keeping it in a locker, how you are going to protect that data and so on. And the right to be forgotten in EU GDPR. So you can ask all the data to be deleted because it's your data. But in other laws, I think this is not. There's a India, even in India, there's something called data protection bill. So you can't ask them to delete the data. And same for the as I read from Personal Data Protection Act in Malaysia, you can't ask it to be deleted, but you can they can't keep it more than they want. Yeah, so there's a certain limitation as well. And the portability. So if you ask to get a copy of the data, so they should give it to you in a machine readable format, and you should be able to transfer that from one data controller who is the owner of the data to, not the owner who controls your data, to the another user. But in the Malaysian principle, so they don't. You can get it in the document format, but there's no way you can transfer that data to another business. But please correct me if this is not the case. And the privacy by design. So this is an important aspect in EU General Data Protection Regulation. So when you are designing a new system or a process, you should consider about protecting personal data and the privacy by the design stage. So you should make sure that all human, organizational, and technical measures are in place to protect the privacy. And there's another concept called the data protection by default. That means that your lowest setting should be able to protect personal data. So it shouldn't be a trade-off. Even your default settings for privacy should be good enough to protect individual rights and privacy. And there's another important aspect, data protection impact assessment. So whenever, if you are not sure if a particular processing of data affects an individual, so you should carry out a data protection impact assessment to make sure that the impact is minimized. For example, let's say you are building uh, you are screening DNA or genome. You are carrying out a DNA analysis to identify future sports personnel. Yeah. So if you are doing a study in a school to do a DNA analysis to identify, because in some studies they reveal that for certain DNA or genome combination, they will be good in sports. But if you do this in an early stage of a school or school, so if someone tell you, okay, you won't be a good sportsman in the future, it is not good, isn't it? So that affects that individual. So if you are doing such systems, such technology, such processes, you need to carry out a data protection impact assessment. And if the impact is high, you have to carry out certain measures to minimize that impact as well. So these are few examples. Uh, so systematic or extensive profiling with significant effect. So if you are going to profile, okay, these are good students, these are bad students. So some kind of profiling and specific category of criminal offense data. So for example, let's say you are running a job employment company and you have automatic tool to go to the criminal offense register and check whether they have criminal past. If you are designing such systems, you should make sure that you carry out a DPIA to make sure that there's no impact for the individual. Systematically monitor public accessible places on a large scale. For example, if you're using a CCTV technology and you are using AI kind of technology to detect, and any innovative technology as well. So if anything to do with AI and machine learning, there should be certain, you have to carry out the impact assessment. It is by law, you have to do it, but it is a good practice as well. And these are few other things. Hospital processing its patient genetics or health data. So it is sensitive data using CCTV analysis and other things as well. And there's another thing called legitimate interest assessment. Legitimate interest impact assessment. You know, you should give positive explicit consent to process your personal data. But sometimes, on the website in cookie banner, you always see consent and legitimate interest. I mean, these things were not visible to us before, isn't it? Because of the EU GDPR in 2018. So these are visible to us now. So what does it mean by legitimate interest? So there may be a legitimate interest. Let's say there's a patient in the AI and he's unconscious, but the doctor wants to access his personal health record. So he can't give consent, isn't it? He's unconscious. So it's a legitimate interest of the patient to access the health record and provide the required support. Yeah. So and even for the legitimate interest, so some companies can play on this one. Our websites, for example, if you say legitimate interest tick, they may play on it and they may send too many advertisements to you and so on. So you should carry out a legitimate interest assessment as well. So it is similar to DPIA, but bit in a lighter touch. And the data subject, right? So this is very important. So this came up with the data protection regulations. So you are the sole owner of your personal data, so you should be able to correct them and ask them to delete it, or ask them to get a copy of all the data held by, let's say, Facebook or Twitter, and they should be provided to you within 30 days or something. And there are certain laws coming into, in a way, control this AI and machine learning. For example, this chat GPT kind of large scale language models. I think this is not enacted yet, but this is, I think this will be one of the main laws across the world. I think many countries will follow this AI Act as well. So when with this act, each company has to reveal the content used to train their systems. Yeah. So ChatGPT will have to uh, reveal how they are training their system. So they want to see whether there's a bias or not, and so on. And they will categorize different high risk uh, items as well. So unacceptable risk will be something like government run social scoring of the type used in China, which will be banned. And there will be some high risk applications like CV scanning tool that ranks job applications. So because if a if you have automated tool to rank CVs and someone is missing out of because of that and missing a job, losing out on a job, so it's not good, isn't it? So they want to ban, they want to name them, consider them as high risk items, or anything else, it will be largely left unregulated. So you can read about this new law. I'm sure many countries will follow and establish similar things as well. And there, during COVID time in Korea, so they use CCTV cameras to detect face mask and detect individuals as well. So that kind of technologies, I mean, if it is only for COVID control measure, that's fine. But whether they use that data to do something else, so that is another problem. So which is not allowed within these new regulations as well. So there's something called purpose limitation. So if you get data for one purpose, COVID-19 purpose, you can't use it for something else. You can't use it for law enforcement or any military intelligence or anything like that. So AI investments in UK. So recently, UK government invested 31 million dollars, sorry, pounds in AI consortium led by University of Southampton, and it is to establish a responsible AI initiatives within UK and beyond as well. And ChatGPT owner, the mother company OpenAI, recently opened their first overseas branch in London, UK as well. So it will be interesting. There's something going on with responsible AI, EU EU AI Act, and OpenAI opening a branch in London. So there will be some interesting developments in the future as well. And UK approach will be pro innovation, because some people say that if you are trying to control AI kind of technologies, that will affect the innovation. But in UK approach is to make it more pro innovation. So make sure the safety, security, and robustness, appropriate transparency and explainability, fairness, accountability and governance, contestability and red trust. So these are the main pillars of UK control coming into the space of AI in the near future. So so the previous things I talk about administrative controls, yeah, but of course, to protect personal data, there can be technological measures as well. So for example, data loss prevention solutions, privacy enhancing technologies, self-sovereign identities, distributed identities, for example, blockchain kind of technologies. Of course, yeah, there are different ways you can use it. For example, self-sovereign identities or distributed identities. You know that a few years back, the Twitter was hacked they use some of the administrators' username and passwords to log in the system. That happened because all our identity details are in one place. Yeah, so they are called data honeypot. So if your identities are distributed and you are just sharing a token as an identification, these kind things can be avoided. And when it comes to encryption, so something like fully homomorphic encryption, where you deal in the encryption than with the real data. So data loss prevention, you know that when the personal data is in use, endpoints, let's say at the reception or the administrator's computer, or data in motion in the network or in the storage. So there are technologies you can protect data, or if someone is trying to copy a password file into a USB stick. So these kind of technologies can detect those activities. And privacy enabling technologies, for example, data anonymization, pseudonymization, data minimization, and of course, homomorphic encryption as well. There are several technologies, and there are many research going in this space as well. And as I said, this ChatGPT kind of technology. So these things can come into the personal data space. So what happens if something ChatGPT you came? So there was a news. I don't know whether you heard Michael Schumacher. So the magazine publisher interview with Michael Schumacher, who's injured. You remember he met an accident in a skiing resort, and that interview is generated by a character AI.com. It is another AI tool to talk like someone, a celebrity and someone. So if this if this kind of technology come into place, so our personal data will be affected. So another new development happening around us is metaverse. You know that they expect us to interact in 3D worlds. So with that kind of technology, there will be lots of data collection through different sensors and different environments. So these can be lead to uh, several negative effects as well, cyberbullying, impersonation, and unlike passwords. So if the biometric data is leaked, so you can't recover it, isn't it? So if your thumbprint is leaked, you can use 10 the other 9 fingers, but after that it's gone because you can't recreate it, isn't it? So you have to be very careful when you are revealing your biometric information, face images, iris scan, and so on. An impact on vulnerable populations. So what happens if the underage children get into these metaverses and try to interact with others, unknown people? How to establish consent and legitimate interest and so on. And these avatars, so virtual worlds or virtual mini versions of us will go beyond the boundaries. So this may violate certain data localization principles. So, EU GDPR, they allow data to be transferred to other countries as long as they are using the same regulations. But if you take the Indian bill, data protection bill, they don't allow data to transfer outside India. I'm not sure about the Malaysian law principle around the data localization and the subject rights across the borders. So so that will be another interesting thing for the metaverse, and abusing avatars as well. So there can be bullying, abusing the avatars, whether it is same as abusing the physical person. So these are some interesting debates in the future as well. So these are few references I used to prepare this presentation. Yeah, that's all from me. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or any thoughts, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Chaminda, for the engaging lecture. Thank you so much. So I appreciate how you explain about the data protection challenges, right? The pros and the limitation of ChatGPT with several examples of using it. We can see the example, and with the challenges of the data leak, the data protection challenges, but we do have the solution, right, to protect this. For example, like you mentioned just now, we have the data loss prevention, the encryption, and so on. So I open the floor to ask to ask some question to Dr. Chaminda. Is there any question to ask?
Probably I open the question first, Dr. Fiza.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
All right. Okay. I'm just wondering because when we say about the comparison between the GDPR and PDPA, there are different PDPA in Malaysia, in Singapore, Asian countries, European country. I'm not sure. In the future, in the near future, is it possible there'll be any synchronization between the European country and the Asian country? Do you have any idea, Dr. Shamida?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Madina. That's something I think which was investigated by one of our PhD students. So, how to come up with a global data protection law? So something like United Nations Charter, because like for example, NATO. So NATO has 31 or 32 countries. So if something happened to one of the NATO countries, they have come together to respond. Similarly, there should be something for the whole global for the whole world basically, because personal data is for the everyone, isn't it? Not for regardless whether you live in Malaysia or UK or Sri Lanka or anywhere, isn't it? But this is the same problem in America as well, for example, because they have federal laws related to data. There's no federal law for data protection in America, but there are state laws. For example, California, they have a data protection law for California. So, but then what happens if someone moved from one state to another state? So that is definitely in need at the moment, I think. But how to set it up? So it should be something like United Nations guidelines or act on data protection. Yeah, that's something we have to do. So maybe yeah. So we can work on a project to see what are the possibilities and what are the avenues to do it as well.
Thank you. Very interesting. Looking forward for that kind of collaboration because I knew
Yeah.
that there are so many different countries has different act, different regulation. It just
Yeah.
hopefully soon we'll see the standardizations among all the countries in the world. Hopefully,
Yeah,
right?
that's true. Yeah. So
Okay.
something similar to ISO standards like ISO 27001, for example. It is a global standard, isn't it? So similar things should be there for data protection regulation. But enforcing is a problem, isn't it? Even when someone do something in one country, when he move to another country, it's very difficult to track them and prosecute them because they are in a different soil. So there are still problem when you are trying to enforce something. So I think a long way to go, but I think that's where we should be heading anyway. And one thing I want to tell the audience as well. So I think we will invite you as well. So we have a plan to do a like a edited book on data protection laws across the world kind of thing. So I'm sure some of your researchers may be interested in contributing to it as well. So I'll pass that information to Madina and Norita soon. Yeah.
I have a question, Dr. Chaminda.
Yep.
How do you handle student who submit no assignment using ChatGPT or Google Bard, for example? I mean, we cannot prevent them from using the technology, but how do
Yeah.
you handle those situation?
Yeah, I think there's no technical solution as such, Norita. But mainly what we do is like the old method. So we invite the students to a face-to-face meeting and ask the questions,
I see.
explain the assignment and so on. Then they will struggle if they copied.
Yeah.
But going forward, I think like Turnitin, that Turnitin, we use Turnitin software to check the similarity. So I
Yes.
think there should be a plugin to Turnitin, for example, with ChatGPT API. So some of these prompts, questions we should be able to put it to ChatGPT and get their response and compare the similarity as well. But
But they have the AI generated document analysis, right, in the Turnitin.
Turnitin at the moment, or
Yeah. Yes, yeah, they
Are
already
you
have it.
using it in? Are you using
Yeah.
in your assignment?
Yes, yes.
So
So
how
you
accurate
can
are they?
choose. Well, I don't know. I tried one of the students assignment and it gave me 16% AI generated. So
Okay, that's
so is that
interesting.
okay or
That
is it-
no,
that's
16% should
reasonable?
be fine. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
we normally allow 10 to 20% similarity anyway. Because you know the sometimes the references and so many things are similar, isn't it? For in some cases. So yeah, it depends on case by case, but this is something I will investigate further, Norita. So how
yeah,
effective, how accurate these rating, whether it is AI
yeah.
generated or not. Yeah.
Mm. Because
It will be very
there's
interesting. I think it will be a good project as well, Norita.
yeah.
So I mean, see whether these tools definitely work or not, isn't it? So
Yeah, is it
uh,
reliable?
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But yeah, there's a university in Malaysia there where when the students submit, they have to present. But if your class is 20, 30, 40, probably it's okay. But if your class is 100,
Yeah.
200,
Yeah.
it's a bit impossible for them to present,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
us to ask
So
them.
that's a bigger problem for us as well, because for our MSc program, we have about 300 students.
Mhm.
So sometimes we flagged around 30, 40 for high similarity, but
Uh,
meeting them 20 minutes each, it takes ages, so
yes, yes. So,
yeah, it is not
but,
practical.
yeah,
Thank you for the question.
right. Thank you.
Uh, if we don't have any questions, so I'm happy to take them offline as well. I think from on the chat, I don't know whether I have access to the chat. I don't think so.
Let me check.
Um, okay.
I think no. Okay, I think there is no question in chat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. So please, Hafiza, so please pass my email address as well if they have any questions or anything to discuss. So yeah, I'm happy to respond offline as well. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
May I ask question?
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
please. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Fazli, one of the lecturer here in USIMS. So I would like to ask to create a unified kind of monitoring policy at a global arena sounds ideal, but could be challenging because we have so many global powers, especially now Russia and the US in a big conflict. And also, cyber intelligence among these big powers, we don't know how far, how deep they actually rooted towards their so-called other countries, okay, targeted countries. Maybe in cyber intelligence of US, actually, they actively try to penetrate the Russian related agencies for cyber intel. So if they come up with a policy, definitely these agencies are already breaching the policy at the global arena. They put themselves like they trap themselves. So any comment? Or is it possible to have this ideal policy?
Yeah, that's a good observation. Firstly, but cyber intelligence is different. Data protection is different. So if you look at UK data protection law, which is called Data Protection Act 2018, so they are trying to protect personal data of the individuals, but there's a exception for law enforcement and military. Of course, they can check if they want to say, you remember there was a case with FBI and iPhone. So they want to access some conversations, but Apple was not giving the rights. And some countries were against the end-to-end encryption of WhatsApp, because they want to see when it comes to law enforcement. But especially the military intelligence, cyber intelligence kind of thing, they want to access data. And you may know there's a law in America called Patriot Law. any data stored within USA or passing through USA, they can go and check it. So that can violate many personal data, isn't it? So most of what the cyber intelligence or military intelligence is doing, I mean, they are doing it anyway. If it is for good purpose, it's good. But if they are doing it for bad purpose, that is not good as well. But having this data protection across the world is kind of good practice, you know. So it is to protect everyone, because it will be individuals will be affected by. That's why this should be something should be implemented by United Nations. So someone I mean, everyone is I mean, by an organization, everyone has some respect, and who can implement such not a law as such, but as a best practice, you know. If you are a company in any country, if you are playing with personal data, you should protect it. You shouldn't give it to someone else. You shouldn't use it for some other purpose. So these are basic guidelines, isn't it? So I'm sure that can be done, but of course, the law enforcement and military intelligence, they will do their work anyway, isn't it? So they are sometimes superpowers and so on. But as long as there's some control, at least some good practice, which will benefit majority of the personnel in the world, isn't it? So that's my take on it, Fasil. Thank you.
So I think, is there any other question?
I think we should wrap up, Dr. Fiza.
Yeah.
Is it okay?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
then.
sure.
Yeah, it's almost 1 hour.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So again,
So-
thank you. Maybe you want to add, Dr. Chaminda?
Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity. So I enjoyed the talk, as well as the comments were very good as well. So something we can work on in the future as well. So thank you very much. So looking forward to work with your school as well as your cyber research center in the future as well. Thank you very much.
Probably
Alright.
we can take a
Thank you.
photo, Dr. Hafiza.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
There's a big crowd today, almost 80.
Okay, everyone, you can open your camera.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I think from outside, from the CSAM.
We
CSAM
have
actually
We have from
Security
UTM as well.
Yeah,
Dr.
it's from
Rashida.
UTM, UIA,
Thank
UTM.
you so
Okay. So everyone is ready? Not yet. Dr. Sharin.
much. Okay, too.
Forward kita.
Okay. So, student, tak nak buka camera. Okay. Alright. So, 1, 2, ready semua? Ready? Alright. 1, 2,
Ready.
3. Alright.
Sekali, satu lagi.
Okay.
Kombinat is
1,
I'm not
2, 3.
Combination to the master.
Alright. I'm done.
Alright. Okay,
Okay,
thank you,
you,
everyone.
Dr.
Thank you all.
Chaminda, for
Okay.
great sharing today. Thank you, everyone,
Yeah.
for joining our webinar today. Thank you, everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Assalamualaikum. Bye.
Bye.
now we inshallah, hopefully.
Have a good lunch.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Take care.